All right. So today's topic and this month's topic is balance, which is really important. And, we talk a lot about balance and like work-life balance, but this is just thinking that of balance like holistically in all the areas of our life. So we'll be focusing on different areas each week, but it's a really important one. And when I was thinking of balance, oops, and I spelled this wrong because there's no E there, I think. I'm going to get rid of that. There we go. I was thinking about cairns, which are those stacked stones and that really represent, balance. I mean, sometimes you see these amazing stacks and you think, how are these things staying up? Because it doesn't look, when you look at it, it doesn't look like it makes logic. But they have to be really careful about how they stack these stones. The weights have to be just perfect. And of course, our lives are not that balanced. It's really hard because we're not a static, pile of rocks. We're always in motion. So we have to think about having equilibrium and balance within motion. So then I was thinking about the bicycle analogy. Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep balance, you must keep moving. That was by Albert Einstein. So anyway, I thought CAIRN would be CAIRN, not Karen, would be a cool thing to work on, subject. And then grayscale, because I thought it'd be fun to do some charcoal, which I haven't done for a long time. So the pattern is stones and I mean, you can do stones or rocks, or you can go your own way. Whatever balance means to you is fine. And then the technique for today, of course, is shading, because it's going to be grayscale. And so that's pretty much what we can do. And I'm, like I said, I haven't worked a lot with charcoal. I've studied up on some techniques and things like that. So, and some suggestions that I'm going to try out with you. And then the collage material, I just picked Label Maker because I figured I could put the quote in with the Label Maker, because I'm not really going to do a collage. I'm just going to go right on the paper. And one of the quotes I liked was, "The secret to life is finding the right balance to everything you do." And that's so true. And then I have just some fun facts. Now, if you look at this picture, look at this little tiny stone right here in the bottom. How is this staying upright? But if you find that right balance, you can do that. Cairns have been used throughout history as memorials, burial markers, landmarks, trail markers, and could range in size from small stacks to small mountains, actually. And I didn't know that, but I thought, I'm going to research a little more about them. I see them a lot more and more on trails. And so anyway, they I think they're used in meditation, for meditation as well. But I thought that was a nice symbol. And the thing to remember for us, since we are always in motion, is that balance is not a destination, but a constant journey. So we're constantly trying to find that equilibrium, that balance. Our bodies are really good at that regulation. Our bodies are constantly trying to find that equilibrium. So when we stress our bodies in one direction, our bodies counter things and try to move in the other direction, and automatically, like, that's how our bodies are wired. And so we have to be aware of that too, and kind of help ourselves out. Sorry, I've got my, I have not figured out how to turn off these sound notifications for messages that come up. I've tried so many different times, and now it's going to suddenly decide to tell me all my messages. My apologies if you can hear that.
She was grumpy that you didn't want to give her a free ticket to the class. So you can ignore that one.
Oh my gosh. I'm just gonna, I'm not worried about it. I've already had that conversation, and it's $5. I mean, come try it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to come again. But I just, it's not. Anyway. Okay. So I liked this image of the person on the unicycle trying to juggle balls, because that's how life feels a lot of the time. and it takes a lot to stay up. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be able to handle that, but we do handle a lot in our lives, and a lot, we have a lot that's coming at us and that we have to deal with. So here are some tips on staying in balance, and then I'm going to go into more details about starting with your mindset. So start with your mindset of being in balance, and we'll talk a little bit more about what are some of the symptoms of being out of balance for your mindset. So we'll talk about that. Let go of the need to control. Recognizing what we have control over and what we don't is very helpful, because when we think we can control something we can't, we get stuck in this situation where we keep trying to battle that, to keep trying to control that situation, and we simply can't. So we have to recognize what we can control, what we can't, and let go and move on of those things that we cannot control. And the sooner that we can get to that, the sooner we can move on and move past that stuck position. Prioritize your activities. Discover what is important to you, and learn to say no. We've talked about that before. Saying no to one thing means you can say yes to something else. So if you aren't a person who, it's easy to say no. I'm certainly one of those people. It's hard for me to say no. But recognize that in order to say yes for something else, you have to say no to something. That's the way it works. And that's one way you can balance out your life. Integrate all the aspects of your life. So it's not just about work-life balance. It's looking at balance in all of the areas, and trying to integrate them so that you have whole balance. And then, you can journal about this particular topic. You can journal about where is your time spent, where are things feeling out of balance, where you're maybe too much time and energy and resources, I should say, not just time, but, maybe where is your money, your time, your energy, all of those resources that are limited, where are those being spent? And is that how you want them to be spent? Are they being spent on what you prioritize, or are you feeling like they're getting, they're being spent in areas that aren't as important to you? And maybe you can pull some resources from that direction and move them into the things that you really care about and find more balance that way. Now, talking about the mind, this could be a whole rabbit hole that we could go into, so I'm not going to spend too much time. But in my research, I did find a few types of mental balance that we can address, and I'm just going to touch on them very lightly. But there is a link here. If you go to psychologyspot.com, mental balance, you can read more about each of these topics. So cognitive balance, which is about intention and will. So it's important to have desires, have things that you want to do, goals that you want to achieve. When we lose that interest in goals or things that we do in our lives, that purpose, then we start to move into depression. So you want to have those things that drive you, whether it's, I have an intention or desire to go grocery shopping. I have an intention and desire to do art, whatever it is, that starts with that drive or desire to do that thing. And so if you have that's cognitive balance. And ways that you can balance that out is making a commitment to achieving a desired goal. So this isn't just setting a goal. It's not like saying, here's my New Year's resolutions, and you set these goals. But if you really say, I am going to do this thing, and then you move those resources, whatever it is, time, energy, money, towards that goal, and you're really committed to that. The next part of that, because these are all connected, is attentional balance. And this is something that I struggle with in particular because I have ADHD, but it's being able to maintain your attention on the task at hand to achieve those desired goals. So when we have a hard time and lose focus on something, it's really, we get scatterbrained, we get scattered in our life. So being able to, devote your attention to something. And one thing that can help you develop that is mindfulness meditation. And that's really where you just try to redirect your mind to one particular thing. It could be breathing, is a common one because we all have our breath. We've talked about this before as well. So that's one thing that you can practice that can help you to learn how to, direct your attention. And then also doing things one-mindedly, which is basically mindfulness, doing things where you're not multitasking. In this day and age, we're always multitasking. We're in the line at the grocery store, we're on our phones, we're having a conversation with our friend who's there as well. I mean, we're doing 5 things at once. So in order to retrain our brain a little bit to be able to focus, sometimes we have to just try doing things one at a time. And one of those things that I think is nice to do is art, because we can really get into, now I multitask because I'm teaching and doing at the same time, but for myself and my own meditative process, I like to do, drawing or an art project or coloring, whatever it is, that's just about that process. And I can get really into that and get hyper focused. Cognitive balance is experiencing the world without applying judgment or other distortions. And by that, I mean just really being in the moment, being present in the moment of what's happening, and making observations without putting your filters on. And oftentimes when we are in a more positive space, we often tend to put a more positive filter, those rose-colored glasses on the experiences that we have around us. And we see everything as light and happy. But then when we're in not such a great space, we tend to see the darker side of it, and everything seems like a catastrophe. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But being in the moment, being present in the moment is about just observing and not placing your judgment or interpretation on that. So one way that you can work on balance there is to do fact checking. So if you experience something and you're feeling really upset about it, you may interpret it. Let's say you had an experience with someone and you're like, oh, she was being really mean to me. If you tell me that, if you say she was being really mean to me, I don't know how to interpret that, because I don't know what that looks like for you. In my mind, I might have a completely different picture. But if you start now describing her behavior, like what you actually saw, she slammed her hand on the counter, she rolled her eyes, she was talking very loudly. Those are facts that you can say for sure that, it's, if we had a video, we could prove it in a court of law, whereas your interpretation of it, you can't. So being able to just stop and recheck and reset and do some fact checking to see if the situation that you're observing is truly, what you're interpreting it to be, or maybe your filters might be a little bit off. So, and that brings us to emotional balance, which when we are off in any one of the other 3, then we tend to be off kilter also in the emotional balance. And this is usually where the symptoms come in. If we're snapping at people or, just behaving maybe angry or hostile towards others, maybe we don't have patience. These are symptoms of us not having mental balance, because something is off. It could be one of those 3, could be all 3, could be, any combination. But that's the symptom that we can say, you know what, I've just been really like feeling so stressed, and I need to check my mental balance and see where things are off. And maybe it's just that your energy is being spent on too much on one thing, and that might not be your choice. You may be forced to spend time because maybe there is a crisis that you're having to deal with. So sometimes you're just off balance because life throws you a curveball, and you have to be patient with yourself to get back on balance. But you do need to self-care through that as well. Some ways that you can work on practicing your emotional balance is by checking your systems to see how you're doing in the other 3, and then also practice emotional intelligence. And again, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of this, so I'm just going to touch on these lightly. But emotional self-awareness, just being aware of what you're feeling. Identify your emotion. When you can identify your emotion, you can understand more about why you're feeling that emotion. Maybe you can recognize what are some of the triggers for that. Why is it that you're having that emotion? and do some fact checking to say, oh, maybe I can look at this a different way and regulate your emotion that way. There's lots of different tools to regulate your emotion, but that's part of emotional intelligence, is being able to see, is my emotion reasonable considering what my experience is? And sometimes it isn't, because we're putting our filter on, and we think something is different than what it really is. When we can just fact check, we go, oh, okay, maybe she's not angry at me. Maybe she just, maybe she tripped and hit her hand on the table, and that really wasn't about being angry, at all. We just don't, we don't always know the stories. So we can kind of shift the story sometimes. Self-motivation, finding what motivates you and using that as a tool to help get you unstuck when you're feeling stuck on getting motivated to achieve that goal, for example. So let's say I need to go to Costco and I don't like shopping, but maybe I can reward myself by knowing that if I go to Costco, I can get myself some chocolate. And then that's my motivating, my motivator to get me to go. So if you understand how you're motivated, what charges you, what, sparks your energy, you can use that. Empathy is the final thing, when you can actually put yourself in other people's shoes and be able to empathize with them, try to understand their situation, and it allows you to have compassion. So if maybe she tripped and hit her hand on the table and really wasn't angry, and now if you relook at the situation, you go, oh, she really wasn't angry, she just is a little clumsy, and I feel bad for her because, I'm clumsy too, and I understand that. So empathy is a really important thing to help us to see the world a little bit differently and have a little bit more compassion and patience for others and the situations. Okay, I know I said I was just going to touch lightly, and I did, and that's lightly, and I talked a lot, so I'm going to stop. That is the lightly, sorry, but there is so much I could go down the rabbit hole of that, but we will move on. Okay, so now, let's see, I don't want to share, never mind. Before I share, I just wanted to have an illustration. I don't have stones to stack to make a cairn, but I just wanted to kind of show you an illustration of what I mean by finding balance. So when this is still at the bottom of, I'm thinking of a pendulum. I don't have a pendulum, so this is going to act as my pendulum. But when it's still at the bottom, this is equilibrium, right? It's not going left or right, but our life is more, there's always something going on, okay? But if we go this far in life on something, and we have to go back the other way, because life dictates that the more energy you build this way, the more energy it's going to take this way. So if I let my balance get off this far, this is what it's going to take to get back to equilibrium. It's not too bad. It moves pretty quick back to equilibrium. But if I go way over here, then look how long it's going to take to get back to equilibrium, because you have to go through that energy. And oftentimes we overcorrect because so much energy has been built going in one direction that it takes that much energy to release and get back to equilibrium. So if we can try to stay in motion at this level, instead of staying at motion in this level, we can more easily get back to balance when we get out of balance, if that makes sense. So hopefully that's a good illustration that can help you understand the concept. All right. And the picture that I had, now I'm going to share my screen. But I'm going to share this screen. Okay, let's go back over here. Okay, so this was that quote that I had in there, and I thought that this is a great picture, and it's already in grayscale. So I'm going to use this as my inspiration for my art. Now, in the past, I did this just with this is with a micron and pencil, color pencil, just brown, but just stacking rocks. So I came across this because it was something that I had done with stacking rocks a while back. And I just wanted to share this quote because it actually ties into this as well. The important thing is to do something, even if it's as simple as making a pile of pebbles, for it is always the doing that leads to the becoming. And before you know it, you're on to the next stage of life. And that kind of ties into that, you know, have an intention and make an intention to do that, to reach that goal, and make a commitment to reach that goal, whatever it is, however small it is. It can just be getting out of bed. Like I'm not talking about anything that has to be you know, groundbreaking. Okay, so let's talk about some of the supplies. I'm trying to think if I do want to write, but I can't write here. I think I'm just going to write on this piece of paper. So for our writing exercise, let's just talk about balance in our lives and how we are feeling. Are you feeling like you have pretty good mental balance, or do you feel a little bit stressed? And can you maybe identify some things that might be off balance for you? And just write the 3 minutes about that. See what you come up with. Your mark, get set, go. I'm gonna probably write this one off off camera today. Okay. And the reason I wrote off is because I'm having have a situation with someone, none of you within in my life, who's causing a lot of frustration. And I'm trying to, I'd like to have some compassion and empathy, and I'm struggling with it right now. So, and probably I'm struggling with it because life has been kind of off balance with all of the challenges I've been dealing with home projects and things not working. So I just have to recognize I can't control her. I can't, you know, and her behavior doesn't have anything to do with me, and I have to not take it personal. So it's easier said than done. But I realize that, you know, if I can find that other balance in the other areas of my life, maybe I can have better empathy and compassion for her and her struggles, because probably her behavior has to do with her own challenges. So it's as cryptic as I can be, but all right. So this is going to be my inspiration. We'll see how that goes. If you want to do a screenshot of it, if you want to have a picture, otherwise, you could just kind of do any general stack of rocks and kind of make up your own shadow sequence if you want. All right. And so let me talk about the supplies. I have just a regular graphite pencil. I might sketch out the rock shapes with that. But if you do use graphite, just know that, and I learned this the hard way, that charcoal does not blend well with graphite. It's a different medium, and graphite is too shiny, and it kind of seals the paper a little bit. So if you are going to use it just to sketch, just do it very lightly. Don't put a lot of the graphite down, because that could cause problems. And then what I have, and I used to have the sticks and all sorts of different options, but because I wasn't really using it too much, I must have gotten rid of a lot of those things. But I have these charcoal pencils, and just like graphite pencils, they have, like, you know, lead darkness, like that's a 6B. Now this one is a HB, so it's more of a hard. So if I wanted to do some detail, and just as a reminder, the numbers usually have a B or an HB, and the H is actually hardness and B is blackness. So typically if it's more black, it's softer, and if it's harder, it's less soft. It's harder. Makes sense. So HB is kind of right in the middle, because it's kind of like, you know, in the middle of the road of hardness and blackness. At least that's my understanding. And then I have this different brand. I have the Derwent charcoal, and I have this one, just calls it light, medium, and dark, which is easy to work with. And again, typically the dark I would expect to maybe be the softest of them. And so if you're trying to do details, you're going to want to use the harder one. And if you're just if you want something that's going to do shading and blending, you want to do the softer one. And you can even see the leads are this one's definitely darker. These two look similar, but you can see a little bit difference. So we'll play around with those. I mean, I'm going to find out. Like I said, I haven't used them too much. So the other thing I have is this Chinese white, and this is called a pastel. This is not charcoal, because charcoal, you know, isn't white. This is a chalk, but it's kind of a similar consistency, and you can use the chalk with the charcoal. So I thought I would maybe try to use this for some highlights, maybe, I don't know. And then I also have a paintbrush, because you can use that as a application tool for soft application. And I have some Q-tips for the same, for blending and application. I also have just a tissue to wrap around my finger. Now you can use your finger to blend, and many artists do. Just be aware that our fingers are very oily. So sometimes if you have particularly oily fingers, you may get blotchiness to it, because wherever you put the oil is where the charcoal is going to stick more. So I don't know if it would be a good idea to prime your finger with some charcoal first, just to get it, just to try to cover that oil. But just be aware that that could be a potential something that you would run into. And then I have a tortillon for blending. It's just a rolled paper. It's a blending tool. And I have a kneaded eraser, which a lot of times when you want to bring back highlights, you can use an eraser, kneaded eraser, or this is more like for just gentle lifting. And then you can use other erasers too. I have my electric eraser if I want to detail. I don't know that there's an area that I will use that, but white eraser works fine. I have my stick eraser, so I have just a variety of erasers. And then I have just the pad of some sandpaper, and that can be for sharpening these. I think I could also use a pencil sharpener, I hope, for the wood part. But if I just want to sharpen where the charcoal is, I think I could just use that. And then I put the shavings in here, and you can actually, with your brush, you can take the graphite, or I mean, not the graphite, the charcoal, and then kind of brush it on too. So I'm just saving little shavings for that. And then one issue that people have is smudging. So if you are doing something over here and you have some charcoal here and you put your hand in it, you're going to put your oils, and then you're going to get it on your hand, you're going to smudge it. So you can put something down like vellum or whatever. I just have a baking sheet. You can put that down, put your hand on it, so that you can reduce the amount of smudging that you do with the charcoal. And I don't know if this will be helpful, but this is one of those little tools that just blows dust. So I thought if it gets, you don't want to wipe the dust off. You have to be careful because you don't want to smear and smudge your charcoal work. So you have to be really gentle. So this is just one way to be gentle about blowing off the dust, or you could use a soft brush maybe. And if any of you have better tips because you've had more experience with charcoal, please feel free to chime in. These are just some scratch watercolor paper. Typically, you want to use a paper that's got tooth to it, that's got some texture, because that's what attaches to the charcoal. But I've seen, different people, depending on how much white you want to show through, that may be different. But this is watercolor paper, and I thought I've seen somebody where they just put a bunch of charcoal here and then they dip like their tissue in here to then apply it here. So they're not putting so much of the charcoal, because sometimes if you draw with the pencil, you get those you get those lines of the drawing. So this is a way to get some subtle smudging on the page without, having, because some are harder to erase than others. I think the darker it is, the softer it is, the easier it is to erase. So typically, and I don't know if these have different erasabilities, but that's just one way to make it a little bit softer to apply. And then I think that's everything that the last thing to keep in mind, especially in a journal or something like that, is you want to be able to do a finishing, because it'll always stay a little bit loose. And if it gets wet, even, it can be affected. So you do want to use some type of fixative that is for charcoal or pencil. You can use, people sometimes use just a spray, an aerosol hairspray. So if you have that, just something that will lock that medium into the paper so it doesn't smear and get easily damaged. All right, now that we've talked about all of the materials, let's get to it. I'm going to start with just kind of doing a little light sketch of my layout. I'm going to leave space here for my words, and then I'll just pretend like this little rock extends further. So I'm just going to make up that kind of rock formation. And then I'm just going to bring, and then the stone. And I'm not trying to like match it exactly. I'm just trying to get an idea of where things are. There's a little bit of you know, overlap. I might even add some additional stones. Okay, there's just my stack of stones. Very lightly, try not to press too much into the paper and put too much of that graphite down. So that's my, oh, and then one other thing is at some point there's a horizon, and I don't know if I'm gonna, maybe I'll put that in. I'm just gonna put this down. There's like this horizon of the sea, because this is ocean and this is sky, and it's very gray. It's gray on gray on gray. So I don't know if I'm going to show that, that's going to show up or not, but all right. So I think I'm going to start with the background a little bit, just kind of fill in. Now the rock at the bottom has a lot of white to it. So you want to leave, just like with watercolor, you want to leave white as much as you can, but just remember you can bring white back by erasing. So it's a little bit easier than watercolor in that regard. So I'm going to try this technique of just putting some charcoal down, and I'm going to try to do the darkest one, since I think that's the softest. And I'm going to kind of rotate the lead so that it also sharpens my pencil while we're at it. So it's putting a lot of little kind of dust particles on there. So now I'm going to take my tissue. It's just, now this is not paper that's designed specifically for working with charcoal. So I don't know how it's going to work. It does have a texture to it. So it has a little bit of tooth to it. So hopefully it'll work fine. But this is all experimentation. So I'm just going to take some onto this, and I'm going to start with going around this rock. And I like how that's working. That's nice. Because sometimes, you know, you just try to do the pencil and it's just so harsh, and you have those lines that you can't always get rid of. So if your tissue starts to get pilly, or, you know, then you just change up. Now this is an ocean down here. I'll do some of the details around the rocks later with my brush, because it's hard to get my finger exactly there. But yeah, that's kind of a nice. And I'm going to say maybe that the ocean is darker than the sky. Now you can do a cairn with any medium you have. If you don't have charcoal, you can use pencil. You can use colored pencils. You can even use watercolor. Oh, you know what? I forgot to open up my, he's the other person. comes, I miss them. Just gonna move to another area of my now again, I can clean up where that's what's close to the rocks too with an eraser. But I was going to use the brush, and I will. But I got close, and then I can clean it up a little bit later. And using the tissue kind of keeps your fingers clean. I mean, so there's that as well. All right, so that's the ocean. Now I want to do similar thing. I'm going to see if the medium, we'll just see how that looks. So I'm going to use another piece of paper. Hopefully it's soft enough to be able to pick up with my tissue. But that might give me the lighter, these guys, the lighter shade that I'm looking for. Let's see. Yeah, this is medium. Looks the same to me so far. Look more medium. It actually looks like a warmer, it really looks like a different color. This looks cooler. So it actually looks like a warmer gray. That's interesting. Now charcoals come in lots of different, you know, what am I saying? Formats, I guess. I don't know how to say that better. You can have, I mean, I have the pencils, but you can get them in sticks that are just basically a burnt wood that don't have any binders or anything. And these pencils probably do have some binders in them, which make it harder to lift it as far as erasing goes. Okay, so that's different. That is a different color. Just gonna get rid of some of the dust in the trash can. And now I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to try to bring a little bit of that closer by trying this trick with the brush, but I'm going to try to do it with the medium. These bristles might not be firm enough. Let me try it with this brush. And I haven't tried this yet either, but I thought this is an interesting way to apply because you can just really, get to the details and control where things go. So yeah, that works nice. It's really nice. Okay, so now this one down here is the dark color. Let's bring in. I want to try to use all these pencils. So I'm kind of curious how they will compare color-wise. Okay, so that is the medium and dark that I've used so far. And when we look at the rocks, you know, there's a lot of, you know, pretty dark. They're going to get even darker as we do the layers. So. Okay. This rock formation has some gray areas. Let me try another. But it's really it has a lot of texture, so I'm gonna try using the actual pencil and see how that goes. And then I can still do some blending. I'm gonna start with just some light. Because I like the texture that I can get with this pencil. I want that for the rocks. It really works. Nice. I'm just, I don't know, just randomly. All this is really dark back here behind. So I can really fill that in. Now this is the light color. And I'm starting with that, but I can always go in, I think, and just do the darker. All right, now I can go in and kind of smudge that. Let me try the tortillon. See how that is. And that'll break up some of that bright white. I'm going to leave a little bit of, you know, might leave a little bit of white in there. I don't want everything to just be gray, but I don't want it to be so much white. I'm just kind of randomly moving it around. And that texture from the pencil is nice. Gives it a rocky look. Now, I really want the edge of the rocks to kind of pop. So I want to darken a little the sea along the rock line a little bit. So I'm going to try picking up some pigment with this tortillon. Tortillon has a little more detail. See if I can get that edge a little more defined. And soften this edge up here using the tissue again. Just darkening that a little bit. Get some more charcoal on there. My dark. Bring in. Also want to define these rocks, the stones. I'm gonna have to use the actual pencil to do that, to really define those. Try that. And I just want to move the pigment this way, not into the rock, because I want that nice bright highlight there. Let me try the brush. There goes my messages again. And before I'm going to erase a little bit of the graphite that I didn't need to put in there. It's like little graphite between these rocks. There you go. I don't need any of that. And then for the top part, bring back in my middle, my medium color, because interestingly, that's very different. And I'm just, my tortillon, I can clean it up by sanding, or I can kind of rub it on paper, and this can sharpen it too. I just don't want it to be too much of that, the other pigment. See, I have to decide which one did I just do. I don't know which is which now. This one looks fresher. I should have moved this out of the way. Where is this one? Where is this one? Oh my gosh, you guys. That's funny. And I don't want it to be like too obvious that this is, I just want to try to blend that out as much as possible. I don't know if I used the wrong. Ah, I went too dark. That's where this kneaded eraser can come in to pick up some of that. All right, let me get the medium over here. I don't remember which one's me. I should have written it on here. That would have been a smart thing to do. Oh my goodness. I feel like I should just get another. Let me see if I can have another piece of watercolor paper and I'll just another scrap. All right. I can do, ouch. What I should have done in the beginning is maybe have light, medium, dark, and then whatever these two are, HB and 6B. And that way I can just have them ready to go. So medium is here. Light. And then what I can do is blend those out too to see how they look. So this would have been a good starter. This would have been a good starter exercise. This one feels definitely harder. And this feels harder than the other two, but, and then I can just have a blended, see what they look like blended. That's a test to see how they blend and see what color they're going to look like. There we go. That almost, oh, there's some blue. I think there's some blue underneath there. So it's not, I thought that had a blue tinge to it. Okay. So for this, I want it to be that medium and I want it to be real soft. So I want to try to use a brush. Well, it's still doing it darker than I wanted. Maybe. I like this little area just like, I'm just going to erase it. Yeah, see, I think like I put some of the dark and it's kind of stuck there. Darn it. All right, let me try to get some of this medium back in there. It's going to be a little dark spot there. Okay. And then on this side, it's going to be rocks are going to be darker. I'm gonna go back with the dark and just try to bring that detail around. It's going to be even darker, but I want to get the ocean in. Okay. And in this case, the rock is going to be the dark thing. So now I'm going to put the line, but I'm going to bring in the shadow on this side. That makes sense, instead of where the ocean side is, because now that's lighter. I'm already getting my hands dirty. And you can see those, the strokes of the pencil. They don't completely disappear. And the softer it is, the more that might disappear, but also depends on your paper and lots of variables. But I'm going to keep bringing in, darker and darker shades. Layers. Layer by layer. Because that's what I'm seeing, how dark those are. I think the top one's completely dark. But I don't have to follow exactly what that is. I'm just looking at the shapes of some of these shadows, the darkest shadows, and filling in those shapes. And then I can move some of that pigment over for some of those medium shades too. So
making some, texture on this folder. By randomly putting some texture in, moving some pigment around. I just don't want it to be looking like really uniform. Not following any particular pattern. Just gonna see if I can soften that edge a little. Whereas this edge is a little bit crisper. Shadow. Sometimes you get too much pigment on the tortillon and you have to kind of soften it if you don't want to put too much pigment down in the other areas. You want to kind of blend so you can remove some of that. Now these rocks are grayish shades. I want to bring that in. But I don't need to add any more pigment because I already have enough there. I want to tell the story that this rock comes down. So I want a little reflection. There we go. I'm saying that this this one comes down here. There's a little reflection from that rock there. See the shape. Want it's a little more in the, let's see if I can turn down the light. It looks a lot more washed out in online, on the online picture. Let's see. Here you can see some of the detail a little bit better. Because there's more shadowing and shadiness that's in there from what I can see versus what you guys can probably see online. Hard to capture that. All right, medium. I'm just softening some of the bright whites. Just using the pigment that's there. All right, I want to use, let's see, this one's the 6B. Try. It definitely feels like a harder lead than the other, the dark, which gives you more control. So sometimes you want that. I don't know how blendable it's going to be. It says soft in this series, but we'll see. This definitely looks darker. I don't know if I just didn't put as much down, but darkest dark. Darkest dark we can. And the one thing you can do, I think, with charcoal that you can't do with pencil, I think you can get darker. Like I think, because the graphite does have a kind of a sheen to it, and this is more matte. So I think it's easier to get a like a deeper, darker color. I'm trying to get the story that this rock is coming down, and what it's looking like to me and what I'm seeing is different. So I'm just doing a little bit more to get it to tell the story I'm trying to say. So it was looking like the rock kind of went up, but it's really just kind of the shadow. And I think I did too. Maybe this shadow is a little too harsh. So maybe if I just brighten that up a bit, that'll soften that shape. I'm gonna let go of that line. It's a little bit better. I do. And let's see what the white, let's see if I incorporate some white in here. Yeah, that's like. These little rocks are just hard to get a definition on. Just kind of small. Let's see if I can do something. Another tissue. And I want to define my sky and my ocean a little bit more too. I never really used the light color. Maybe I'll incorporate that in there too. Sky. I wanted to use everything, so that's my intention, and I'm committed to achieving my goal. All right, now I'm going to go into, I'm going to try the 6B. Darken up this bottom ocean. I just want this horizon line to be a little bit more distinct. Bring in some of the dark. It's by contrast that's going to show. I wonder, maybe I might do the dark along, do a horizon line with the dark. See if I can have it soft enough so it's not noxious. I don't want it to be too defined, but at the same time, I do want a distinct line there. Let's see if I can do it. That just looks like land or something. It's not really what I wanted, but looks kind of like some land or something there in the back. That's okay. Right, and I might want a little bit more. Maybe with this heart, I can do some of these interesting details. This is not the heart. You know, some of these little pits and things like that that show up. Put some marks. A lot of like just little marks. And then there's kind of rock somewhere. Just kind of giving it some character. And then I'm going to soften it with tissue. Now this is the hard one, so it's not gonna, the pigment shouldn't move. The charcoal shouldn't move too much, which is what I want. I don't want it to move too much. I just want to soften it a little bit, but keep the definition in there. Oh, we're already at 8:36. Okay. I think I've got a pretty good story going. I do want to soften up a little bit of these guys. Okay. All right. I mean, I think it tells the story. There's a lot of shadow, and it's kind of how, these shadows are kind of a little weird. So maybe to me, I'm like, oh, it seems the lighting's kind of weird, but maybe that's just because the way the shadows are a little interesting. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. So that's and then I'll put some kind of quote here with my label maker. Let's see. Either the secret to life is finding the right balance to everything you do, or well, that is good, but that's going to take me a long time to type out. So you know what I'm going to maybe do is I could even use that. I can even cut this out. Maybe I will cheat a little. Hopefully that's not too much of a copyright infringement. Okay, I don't make money on my YouTube anyway, so there, and then I can just paste that on. And since this is really going to stay kind of a dry medium, I can I'm going to use my tape. Well, I didn't use my tape. I didn't use my label maker, but I'm okay with that. Just because I think this actually looks better. I think that would be kind of harsh to have the black on there. So, and I could even kind of shade around it if I want. I don't even like the shade around it actually, but it's too late. Already did it. Because I don't like the shape of it, but I'm committed.
I'm going back now unless I put something over the top of it. That I'm not going to do. Okay. All right. Step away. All right, there we go. Secret to life is finding the right balance to everything you do. Charcoal.